hospitality it's something that we should be very proud of, and it should be career based. We should be holding on to our staff for a long time. It should be in the lines of being a doctor, a lawyer. It needs to be taken seriously.
This week on Dirty Linen, we are thinking about the future. We're not just thinking about tomorrow, the next day, the next week. We're not really even thinking about what's going to happen when stage 4 is finally over. We are looking beyond all that to the hospitality industry in 2021 and beyond. For those who are going to be there, and I hope it's all of you, there's no one better to chat to about the vision of the future than Joseph Vargetto. Joe is one of Melbourne's best known and best loved chefs, and a proud Sicilian, but such an innovator when it comes not only to cuisine, but also the many different businesses that he's launched in the past 6 months. I feel like I've intersected with Joe's food and vision in so many different ways. I've made confit duck. He sent me the ingredients. I've eaten exceptional filled pasta. I've watched him on social media driving around in a Mini. He's really just done everything. So Joe, thank you so much for coming to have a chat to Dirty Linen today.
Absolute pleasure, Dani. Thank you very much for having me.
Joe, you're so deeply embedded in the world of hospitality and in the Melbourne restaurant world. And I know that it's something that you're so passionate about, and that you've really got a vision for how things can improve. So do you want to tell me let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of those big questions. And first of all, let's start with the place of hospitality in our society. How do we think about hospitality? How is it viewed, and how could it be different?
Absolutely. I think I get my hospitality from my mum. So I remember watching her when visitors would come to our home, and she would be very anxious. Visiti, they're coming. So she'd make sure that the house was clean, all the doilies were all appropriately set, the glasses, the little drinks and things like that. And we would welcome the visitors that used to come over to our house. And I used to watch that. I think subconsciously I absorbed a lot of that when people come to your house, you want to not to impress them, but make them feel welcome and generous. So hospitality for me is not just a word. It's something that I live. I always want to be very generous and fulfilling to people that come to the restaurant. And it's one of these things that I don't take lightly. I've been involved in restaurants or as an apprentice, and living in this world for over 26 years. And for me, it's not just a job. I don't wake up and go, I have to go to my job. It's a lifestyle, and I don't say that lightly. It is. I wake up. How can I do things better? What can I do things in the future? What are the trends? What are the things that I can always make better? And I think with the COVID and the lockdowns and a lot of these things that have been quite depressing, I've just said to myself, okay, let's make a depressing state into something a little bit more lighthearted and better. And try to have a restaurant experience at home. So I try to do as much as I can in the restaurant, package it up and send it off to, in a little Mini, as you said before, home, so people can have, our guests can have a restaurant experience at home, and not having to, chop and do all the back end stuff of a lot of this, like the cooking, and just have an experience with, like the risotto pronto, for example. It takes 6 minutes to make.
So I guess what I'm hearing from you is you're saying you're taking the experience of hospitality is something that you take very seriously, like the art of looking after people is something you take very seriously. But do you think that the Australian community more broadly takes hospitality seriously?
No, they don't. They just see it as a secondary, I think, and something that's is secondary. Hospitality is very, very important. It gives everyone an understanding of every. It's a bit like home economics that we used to do, I think, in year 7 or grade 6. I think home economics, how to how to how to make things, how to think on your feet, how to think quickly, how to do things efficiently. And hospitality needs to come to the forefront where we actually accept it as it's a career. I know in Europe they look at it as whether a cooking career, a kitchen career, or a front of house career. And something now with all these new laws and legislations and payroll structures and things like that, we need to make sure that we do these things very, very appropriately, because we can get in a lot of trouble. And hospitality is not just a job; it takes into account people's feelings. So when people walk through the door, how they feel, and sometimes they've had a bad day, and how we can have our guests click out of that and and start having a better time.
Well, I think it's that balance, as you say, of the art of how to treat people, how to make someone's mood change, but then there's also the practical stuff, like the stuff where you have to be a bit more hard-nosed. You gotta get friendly with a spreadsheet. You gotta be more professional, and I feel like you're saying you want there to be more of a structure around that side of the hospitality industry. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's sad that I had this conversation yesterday with a couple of the chefs in the kitchen, and I said it's sad that um, from the formal apprenticeship is not really taken. It's not really done anymore. It's like I remember I had to do 4 years apprenticeship learning kitchen basics. How to mop the floor, how to do kitchen basics, and now a chef can finish their apprenticeship and in 2 years they're a head chef. But no one's taught them how to understand food costs. And I said to them, food costs are not written in the kitchen. They're written in the office, for example, upstairs. So when you write a menu, you write your food costs immediately. So there's no use taking things that are out of season that's going to cost you a lot of money and putting it on your menu. It's going to give you a high food cost. Labour costs. It's a balance between efficiency. It's a balance between how to lay out your kitchen correctly. There's been a lot of design faults. For example, designers just draw up a kitchen. They say, okay, there's your kitchen. And the chef comes in and goes, well, the sink should have been closer to the cool room. The cool room should have been here, that and that. And within a few kind of line drawings, you can manage or reduce your labour costs. Instead of having 3 or 4 people in the kitchen, you can have 2 people in the kitchen, because you've got less walking distances. You become more efficient and effective.
It's funny that you say that thing about mopping the floor, because at the moment, because I'm doing the Attica Soup project, I'm in the kitchen at Attica every week, and I tell you, there is so many basic things about how a professional kitchen works that have been an absolute mystery to me, and that includes cleaning the floor. That includes the actual proper technique for wiping a bench, so that it's. I'm asking the dumbest questions, like like, what do I do with this water that's on the bench? It's like just the most basic things that I feel like, yeah, if I just was thrown into my putting my creative genius to work and coming up with crazy dishes, and it's like, I suppose a lot of chefs want to skip, or not that they want to, but I suppose the kitchen culture and the fact of people getting promoted really quickly because perhaps there are just so many restaurants, a lot of people do skip those basics. And maybe it's not, obviously it's not just about wiping a bench, but perhaps we're also talking about making pasta dough, or filleting a fish properly, or breaking down some meat. So I guess it's all those basics that a lot of the people that have come up through the ranks like yourself lament are not necessarily present in young chefs today.
That's right, and I call them the one percenters. So it's all the one percenters. It's the wiping of the bench, it's cleaning of the floor, it's how to appropriately maintain your dry store, that you can understand your par levels, effective ordering system, an effective ordering system. So you just walk into your dry store and you go, okay, I got three rice, it's this such and such. I look at my sheet, I need a par level of this. It's April, so it's, for example, low season, so par levels are 3. So all these things are just organisational skills that are not passed on to chefs anymore. They're not passed on to front of house. For example, your beverage cool room or your beverage stock takes and things like that. And these are things that over a period of time or a period of a year can cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. And if you could then reinvest that money back into your business, you know, a new something new or inventive or reskilling some of your staff or sending them to a course and reinvesting into your staff, things become more effective. And that's where I think that's where we're losing it. There's just far too many places. There's far too many food operations that are, restaurant versus restaurant. They're competitive, but there's a lot of other places where it's another food outlet, and there's just not enough properly skilled chefs or front of house managers out there to comply or to supply the amount of food operations that we have properly.
I feel like, there's so many thoughts going through my mind. One is that some people are saying we're going to lose 30 to 40% of restaurants, which is obviously going to change the landscape entirely. It's a tragedy for each business that fails. Really largely due to circumstances that are beyond all our control. But another thing that goes through my mind is that it's one thing to complain about the lack of skill and experience or attention to those particular details or knowledge that there is even that detail to worry about. But it feels like if there isn't a culture in Australia that supports the hospitality as a profession and values the people that go into it, where it's not just this thing you do while you're studying for something else, it's going to be really hard to allow people or give people that sense of pride in choosing that as a career. And when you don't have a sense of pride, then you're not going to invest as much in it personally. And I guess customers aren't going to invest in it by paying a decent price for those hospitality experiences. So what do we do about that, Joe?
That's a great question. So I've listened to some experts saying, what's projected jobs or career paths in the next few years. So they've said carpenters are always going to be needed. I think that the appropriate way is that we need a proper university or somewhere where people can go to say, I want to be a chef or a kitchen manager. I want to be a front of house manager. So they go, once they finish high school, they then go to a university or it's a tertiary degree where then it's split into two. Say, okay, I want to be a kitchen manager. So you're a chef. Yeah, you can be a wizard or genius in the sense of coming up with these crazy dishes, but you need to learn how to run the kitchen from the back end as well. You need to understand payroll. And legislation and the payroll structure in Victoria is just crazy. Like even the guys I think that have actually make the law don't even understand it as well. I've got 2 bookkeepers and also our payroll manager, if you want to call it that, and we make sure that we go through it for a fine-tooth comb. And the way how it is all structured, after 8 o'clock, there's this, there's loading, there's that. Anyone can get into some strife. That's the problem as well. And then you've got, for example, a chef or a restaurant manager that are thrown into this position. They wouldn't have any idea. And then they say, oh, can you work, for example, on a Sunday between 12 and 4? Yeah, great. But this person thinks they're just being paid normally. But no, there's Sunday rates, and then there's loading, and then is it state law? Is it federal law? It's just nuts. So if we understand that proper duty of care on how to properly pay our staff, how to properly pay our creditors, and I think the biggest one as well is that we pay our creditors like how we pay David Jones or Maya, or you go to Coles and you have a, and there's no more kind of credit terms anymore. It's just basically pay as you go. So, for example, if 20 kilos of meat arrive today, you have a credit card or credit balance, and then you pay it immediately. So the artisan producer, for example, has that money straight away, so then they can pay their suppliers.
So is that something that you've chosen to do, that you've chosen to let go of those those lines of credit with suppliers, and you've chosen to pay them on the spot?
Absolutely. There's several that we just pay immediately on credit card. So then we know where we're at. We're reducing all our creditors. I think it's been far too long where there's a lot of hospitality, or we say restaurants or catering facilities that are just living on other people's purse strings. So, for example, they've got 6 months that they owe a meat supplier. How is that person going to survive? I think we just have to have, whether the credit terms are 3 days or 4 days or something, but you need to pay them. You need to pay them immediately. That's another thing. There's just a lot of. We just need to make sure that there's a lot of changes and changes in positive ways, where that little grower, for example, the little grower down the road can get their money immediately, so they can survive as well, and laws as well. There's, for example, you can sign a director's guarantee and things like that, but again, there's means and ways, and I've seen that people can get out of it, and they can just walk away from hundreds of thousands of debt, and small producers are just left hanging.
It's interesting because, Joe, you obviously feel really connected to those small producers. I think that's really reflected in the way you use ingredients at your restaurants. And I think now I haven't even mentioned your restaurant. So Mr. Bianco in Kew and Massey in the city, which unfortunately has been closed since the March shutdown. But perhaps we should spend a moment and talk about the city and where you think the fate of the CBD lies.
That's a great question, because the information that I get, I have conversations with a lot of people in the city, not just in restaurants, but a restaurant is, I think, a byproduct of income that someone makes. So, for example, there's offices and buildings that carry 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. I give you an example. ANZ have 3,500 people there at their docklands. A quick survey of their employees said, "Would you like to stay home or would you like to come back?" A resounding 72% said, "Hey, we'd like to all stay home." So now there are large corporations thinking about reducing their size of their office footprint, and then basically not going back. And people are now becoming more efficient staying at home. They don't have to go to their meetings any longer, in the sense of having to travel to their meetings. There's Zoom video conferences. They can schedule one at every half hour. And people say to me, "We've just become really effective and efficient. The only thing that we've lost out on is that kind of banter, that office banter that we might have, kind of ideas and so on that we're not getting." So I think the city will slowly, and this is going to take a long time, but it'll just become, all that office space will have to then change to apartments or something else where people can kind of live in the city. But office spaces are going to reduce dramatically. For example, Massey, being in the city in the legal district, all was basically lunchtime was chock-a-block full, but it was all from the legal areas, the accountants, the lawyers, the doctors, all the area of that. But they're not going back anymore. They're doing video conferencing from home. They're having they're scheduling meetings, and if they have to go to court, they're just obviously making meetings and going into court for that period of time and going back home.
Yeah. It's really hard to see how the city is going to climb out of that one because, I mean, as much as the courts will be active, but it's all those ancillary staff and the meetings and that city life. I mean, what do you think? What are you going to do with Massey? Because it just seems, I mean, even people who, if people come more to the city to live, it's not like they're going to be going out for a nice lunch every day.
Absolutely. And I had this conversation again yesterday. A lot of restaurants, I think, in the city, or restaurants or bars, I don't think the decision is going to be made by the restaurant owner or the bar owner. I think the city or the city is going to make the decision for them. Gone are the days where it's going to take a very long time, and also the narrative as well. I think coming out of stage 4, going into stage 3. The rumours I hear, by the 1st of December we'll be back into kind of stage 2. Christmas Day will be the day that we're going to have like 50 people allowed in a restaurant. I don't think we're going to be able to hold out till then. Massey for me, it's not closed; it's open. But how can you sustain a restaurant, bleeding payroll? Having staff inactive, and your staff are going to be kind of bored and feel, not have job satisfaction, and I'm very lucky to have a restaurant, I think, in Kew at Mr. Bianco that we've done a lot of some really, really lovely things, and that's come about through a really strong staff that are active and they want to do things. And in the city, the city, the Premier's saying, don't go into public transport, don't go into the city if you don't have to. If you are, you'll be fined. And it's just, people are scared now as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely the language is around not gathering, and that's definitely not going to change. As much as restaurants might be open, of course, it's about confidence, but there's no difference now than there was in March. It's like we've still got to put the health response first. So it's just how can that be negotiated in such a way that keeps everybody safe, but also gives businesses a fighting chance. And I think CBD businesses are the ones that I really fear for the most. And Massey, when I think about Massey, it is such a beautiful restaurant. It's just like it's a small place. It's so cozy. You've got those beautiful timber banquettes. It's just got so much atmosphere, and it's such a. But it is not a place that it's not like there's retail around there. It's not like there's that much residential. It's definitely a place, a place for people to go for a business lunch, and it's not just there's a whole culture and a whole style of food and menus around those lunches and around those after work snacks. And I just feel really sad about thinking about the quiet restaurant, but also thinking about that the creativity that people put into those kinds of experiences. That if the customers aren't there, then the creativity that goes along with it isn't there either, and that's really sad. Jo, you've been doing so much, throwing so much energy. I feel like every time I look at your Instagram, you started another sideline. It's incredibly impressive. But I know that at the same time, you've got a health situation that must pose extremely confronting challenges at times. So you've got multiple sclerosis. Can you talk about that and what it's like for you to be in such a stressful situation while also dealing with a major health situation?
I'm very lucky that I've got some great doctors and some great nurses that at Melbourne Private, especially Stephanie that looks after me. She's such a beautiful person and has a really high, I call it moral compass, and we have conversations every time I have to have infusions and so on. But stress and heat are the worst things for multiple sclerosis, and for me, it has flared up a lot. I've kind of sometimes my hand is a little bit, what's the word? I can't use it, or my right leg, I lose my balance, I hit my head everywhere, and it's just a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. But it's one of these things where I didn't even know I had. I was riding my bike to Sorrento there. I got on the bike. I left home. It was 6 years ago on the first public holiday on that Friday of grand final week, and I was just riding my bike. Someone didn't want to give way to their right. They ran me down. I was on the ground. I was very, very lucky to be alive, to be honest with you. Broken ribs, you name it, I was taken to Frankston Hospital. All the doctors didn't want to release me because they saw some shadowing in my vertebrae and some lesions, or a lesion in my head or in the brain, which I said to them.
Wow.
I said to them, "Are you sure there's a brain there? Firstly, check if there is a brain." But then, but they said that I had a brain. So all right, let's move on from that. And then I went to see my specialist and whatever, and then I was diagnosed with MS. I went, okay, I thought I got hit by a car, but I was very lucky that I survived, firstly the car, and then having to do it. But it's been, let's say, it's been tough. But I may have, I don't know, OCD or something, that I'm always trying to do new things, trying to keep things active. I always, I don't know, I always think of other people first. I try to be, very generous in everything that I do. I don't want to let people down. So I think it's just that thing. It's just that thing. I just don't want to let people down. So it's one of these things that, I've got it, but I don't want, that kind of sympathy, or, Joey's got, it's something that I use it as I propel myself in the sense of, all right, I've got that, but I've got to be better than it. I've got to do this. We've got to get through this lockdown. And I just want to have some fun as well. And that's the biggest one as well. It's a lot of the stuff that I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing it to have a little bit of fun, to be creative. I don't want it to be too serious. I've had some of these ideas for a very, very long time. Like this risotto pronto I did like 21 years ago. I remember doing the design for it, and I didn't have any money. And the lady that designed the first risotto pronto, asked me, I think it was like $500 for the design. I went, oh no, I don't have that. And I remember paying her, and I had the design, and then I never used it. And the other, where was it? Yeah. And then I was going through some of my books, and this design, the piece of paper that fell out of the book, and I went, shit, that's the risotto pronto design. And that's when I thought, come on, Joe, let's do it.
Wow.
So it took a few tests and making sure, 8 minutes, cook the rice on a flat tray, bang in the kuru, bang in the chiller, chill it right down. What are the grammages? What's the meals of the stock? How many grams of the risotto? Then I put the thing together. I gave it to a few people. Please try it. They tried it, said it worked. I said, okay, great, it works. So then I put it up online. People have been taking it, and thank you to The Age and Jemima and yourself and everyone that's promoted it, or they reviewed it on in Good Food, and it's just gone crazy.
That's so good.
These last couple of days have been up to my eyeballs in rice. So
good.
It's given everyone a real what's the word, like they've been really happy on and how, like, a lot of the staff, I've put on some extra people, extra staff members in the kitchen, people that were on visas that weren't getting any support from the government. I've employed some new chefs that were obviously on the visas, and it's given everyone this boost, and so on. Suppliers as well. It's helped everyone.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good, Joe. Like even in the depths of stage 4, you've come up with yet another idea, and it's been so successful. So it's really, I think what I notice through everything that you do is such a love for the hospitality industry as a whole, and such belief in the place that it should have in our Australian culture. And also and especially in Melbourne, I think, that you're such a Melbourne person, and you bring so much to our city. So Joe, I just want to say thank you so much for throwing all your energy at all these different projects, and every time anyone sees what you're up to, it's a burst of positivity in definitely trying circumstances. So let's I love to watch you continuing to build the hospitality industry that you want to see around you.
There's a few more things upcoming, but all I want to say is that hospitality is not a transient. It's something that we should be very proud of, and it should be career based. We should be holding on to our staff. We should be holding on to our staff for a long time. It should be in the lines of being a doctor, a lawyer. It's something that we need to be. It needs to be taken seriously. We need to have a voice as well, whether it be a union voice or a lobby group or something like that. We need to have, not just for employers. It's for everyone, and we need to have the right spokesperson as well. So I'm not saying it's going to be me. As I said to you many times, Dani, someone like, I think Ben or Dan Hunter there in Braith, just they love what they do, and they're just good people at the end of the day as well. And I think all of us that are in hospitality at the moment, or running a restaurant, we're all in difficult situations. But if we can all just kind of stick together and just keep our egos at the door and do things for the right reasons and for the right intentions, I think hospitality in the future is going to be a really, really good place.
Great. Well, I can't wait to eat in those restaurants run with that beautiful spirit. Thank you so much for having a chat today, Joe.
Because they can't go overseas anyway now. So
that's it.
They can't go overseas, so we're stuck.
We'll enjoy our beautiful Australian restaurants. Thanks so much for having a chat today.
Grazie, Dani. My pleasure.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.